Well, good afternoon and welcome to Overdevest Nurseries. I'm David Wilson and I'm here in this trial area as part of our nursery where we test and trial our roses. Now, if you've been watching any of the other videos here on this channel, you'll have seen that we grow some beautiful trees, we grow some lovely shrubs, fantastic perennials and climbers, of course, but also some absolutely gorgeous roses. And part of the thing that we do is that we test and trial them to make sure that they perform well in our region. That's right here in the mid-Atlantic and northeastern states of the US. Now, in this part of the garden here, which is incidentally on the top of a hill, so it's fairly blustery and windy, and you're likely to see the plants getting blown about here. And that's part of what we do. We try to test them so that they replicate the kind of conditions that you're going to have in your garden. We don't mollycoddle them at all. We see how they do. Anyway, in this part of the garden, there's predominantly varieties that were bred and introduced by David Austin roses from Wolverhampton in England. So we planted these out here about 4 years ago, and we've been monitoring very carefully their performance, looking to see how they do in the early part of the year, how they do during the summertime, and also into the fall. They might grow beautifully in Wolverhampton in England, but how will they do here in our region? Will they be hardy enough during the winter time? Will they be able to cope with our hotter temperatures and more humidity during the summertime? And will they rebloom and repeat flowering like they do in their English conditions? Well, the answer lies here in this channel, because what we're going to do is to take you through a series of videos and show you the best performers out of all of these plants that we're testing. Now, I said a minute or two that we don't mollycoddle them. We try to keep them in the conditions that they're going to be in an average garden. And what we do, if you look across the beds here, you'll see that the same varieties are replicated in each of 4 beds. The first 2 beds, this one and this one, are sprayed twice in the earlier part of the year with a fungicide to protect them against things like blackspot disease. But also over on the other 2 beds, the furthest away from here now, we don't spray those at all. We want to see how they would do if you had them in your garden and you didn't spray them. Well, if you watch this channel, we'll be able to tell you, because now after 4 years of testing and trialing and ongoing trials too, that's going to be going into future years, as you tune in and watch the videos here in this channel, you'll be able to find the very best performers. And this is an exciting time because, as you see, they are just beginning to flower. And over the coming weeks and months, we're going to be monitoring these plants very carefully to sort out the winners from the losers, the ones that are doing really what they're supposed to do, and that is be a beautiful rose for our garden. Now, as you look across all of these plants, you'll see that there are some that are growing very beautifully. Then there are some that are doing okay. There's some that just didn't make it at all. And that's why we do the testing and trialing, because that sorts out the winners from the losers. Now, over the last 4 years or so, as we've been monitoring these throughout all of that period I was talking about, out of that, there's one variety which is one of the earliest flowering ones, but it's also one of the best performers. When everything's sliced and diced, this variety here, which is called Lady of Shalott, is for me the best performing rose out of all of the ones that we've had under trial here in this garden. And let me show you that here she is, growing about 5 foot high by probably about 5 or 6 foot wide. As you see, she's covered with lots of very healthy bright green foliage. And look at all these flower buds. The first flowers are just opening now, but in another couple of weeks this plant is going to be covered with lots of flowers. So it's a good plant to grow either in a bed or a border, would make a lovely plant for putting in as a rose hedge. And if you have the space and you want to mass it, think about the effect you're going to get when all of these buds in a mass display all break out at the same time. She repeats very well, so she flowers well during the season too. And a little trick, of course, with roses is to grow and deadhead them. That's remove the old flower heads when they're going over. But the other interesting thing about her too is that with beautiful flowers like this, they're lovely for cutting. Makes nice big strong stems, so they're easy to arrange. And when you look at the flowers in detail, the first thing, of course, is to smell them. And it's a lovely kind of medium tea fragrance. It's there, it's very discernible. Not the strongest fragrance out of some of the other varieties, but it's definitely there, and it's really very nice. And when you look at the buds, you will see that they emerge first with a bright orangey color. Then as they gradually unfold, you'll see that from a distance the flowers look like a kind of coppery orange color. But when you look at them very carefully, you'll see that it's got a chalice-shaped flower, a kind of typical old-fashioned English rose type. But when you look at it in close-up, you'll see that it's got pinkish shading. And then when you flip the rose over and look at the reverse side of it, you'll see that it's a beautiful golden yellow. And then, as you see, this will break out and provide a lovely show. And just to reinforce the disease resistance that comes with this nice, healthy, strong growing variety, as you see, this plant and also the one just there, these two have not been sprayed at all. And if you look into the foliage on here, you'll see that it's nice and healthy. And actually this plant right now is probably the most beautiful of the 4 bush roses that we have in this trial. Just a beautiful, I think, a bright and very becoming color. Now this makes a great bush rose. Hardy, robust, will grow anywhere within our region because this is a hardy zone 4 plant, and as I mentioned, make a lovely plant to put in somewhere in your garden. But it's also what I call a dual purpose variety, because while this will grow well as a bush rose, look over there. You see where the goalposts are? Look at the plant that's growing on the fence. That's the very same variety trained as a climbing rose too. And really quite remarkable too. When you look at the warmth that comes from this color, the brightness and depth of color, and the subtle tones that happens with the flowers when they come out first, and then when they go through the stages of passing through to older maturing flowers with this paling effect too, loaded with buds. It's very free flowering, and as you see, makes these nice big strong growing canes, which is why it makes a very good climber. You see, what we do is train these canes up and along the fence, so you could grow this on a wall, on a trellis, on an obelisk if you wanted a freestanding feature somewhere in your garden. But also imagine what this would look like if you had pillars, perhaps on a pergola or arbor, and you train this up. Absolutely gorgeous, and when you're downwind, a nice fragrance too. And what's more, it's not at all difficult to grow. As you see here, we have it out in a nice sunny location. Now this variety will actually tolerate some shade, and if you have a partially shaded site, it will do fine there too. But as you see, when you give it a nice sunny site in an average soil that's free draining, and that's important with roses, they just don't like to have wet feet. Grow them in an average soil, and then in springtime train in these arching shoots, train them out on your arbor, on your trellis or on your fence, and allow them to spread out, and from those then produce little side shoots and they're the ones that carry the flower. Now, if you want to find out more about how you can train climbing roses in your garden, check through this site, because we have a video on there that explains how you can train climbers on a wall or on a frame. I did it in my garden. It's not that difficult, just requires a little bit of extra treatment and you'll get wonderful effect, as you see. But you see, this variety is doing very well, and all we've done is trained out the branches here on the fence, and now it's producing this beautiful show. And the really exciting thing that I wanted to tell you about is that this plant here in this row wasn't sprayed either. This variety, as you see, a testament to its disease resistance. It's growing really beautiful with no sign of disease. Here on this fence, all of these climbers were not sprayed. Over there, if you can see on that far distant fence, is the very same variety, and that plant was sprayed twice, just like the bush roses. And it's doing very nicely too, but honestly, there isn't much difference between the two, which is fantastic for us to have in our gardens, because now we can enjoy roses like this and not have to worry about having to spray them every 10 days. And incidentally, in case you're wondering about the name, it has absolutely nothing to do with onions. You see, this variety was introduced in 2009 to mark the 200th anniversary of the birth of Alfred Lord Tennyson, a 19th century English poet who wrote a poem about the tragic story of an Italian noblewoman who was stranded in a tower on the island of Shalott, just up the river from Camelot. And to mark that anniversary, David Austin decided to call this beautiful variety the Lady of Shalott. And in a way, it's accidental, but I think it's very appropriate that we planted this in front of the goalposts, because this is without doubt a winning variety that is very well worth you thinking about growing in your garden. I'm David Wilson, and this is David Austin's variety, Lady of Shalott. Enjoy your gardening. It's good for us, and it's very good for our environment too.